All right, can you hear me now? Yes, you can. Okay, Jesus, bloody mother, mother of hell. Hold on, let me make sure all the streams are up. Fuck. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So thanks, guys. Just sorry about that. Unbelievable. It was. Okay, great. So okay, so that is sound there. Feedback. Shouldn't be getting feedback, guys. Can you? Are you sure you're getting feedback? One second. We're almost there. Unbelievable that ended up getting all screwed up. So you would have seen the pictures. You just couldn't hear me. Okay, so hold on, guys. I'm just waiting for the YouTube or sorry Facebook feed on the page on the RegWatch page. So I'm just need to make sure. Mhm. Okay. So you guys, the only thing that I don't have a confirmation on is the viewers that are on Regulator Watch's page. There are some viewers there, and nobody's yet commented that there's audio. But I'm sure there is, because if you got me on YouTube and you've got me on my personal channel. Okay, so let's start this again. How are we going to do this? So I have to basically, at this point now, so this is, hi, I'm Brent Stafford, and this is RegRant by RegWatch on regulatorwatch.com. This is an unstructured RegRant today. For those of you who do know that I've been off for a couple of weeks, we finished with that big, huge blast of publishing Dr. David Hammond's research from the University of Waterloo, which of course everybody had seen, from Health Canada to all of the tobacco control advocates to all these other academics. And of course, he shared the findings to all of the media, CBC and Global, and there was these huge pieces all discussing, of course, about how youth and vaping has just gone through the roof and all of these issues around that. But of course, the other side of the issue had not yet received access to that research. So when we finished and aired our pieces with the Director General of the Tobacco Control Directorate at Health Canada, Mr. James Van Loon, I asked him when he brought up the research regarding the youth use, and I was like, well, the David Hammond stuff, yet it doesn't appear to be public. And we know that it's impacted the decision-making process, and he confirmed that. So the Director General of the Tobacco Control Directorate said that Dr. David Hammond's research had substantial cause for concern for them. Same for the Minister of Health, and then prompted the regulator to launch the two consultation processes that the one that was first on advertising and promotion restrictions with regards to youth and vaping, and then the second one, which is, the shoe dropped, which really puts the entire vaping industry on trial, for the lack of a better word, when it comes to access, adult access, flavors, and a whole host of topics that are currently right now under a consultation process. So, of course, when you have a process that has been completely impacted by some research that the researcher has made public, essentially selectively made public, well, it was in the public interest for RegWatch to publish that research. So the University of Waterloo sent us a cease and desist the very next day, which we put up on our site. So I encourage you to go take a look at that. You can find it up in Vapor's Corner. And then we sent them like a 6-page response to that, which I think did a very good job at articulating our responsibility as an established Canadian news organization to publish that research, and also to as well, and definitely, give it a look. Or maybe I'll show you where it is. Right here. All right. So just head to habits, to vaping. So if you just head to vaping, habits, vaping, that gets you to our vaping page. Vapor's Corners are our stuff here on the right-hand side. So if you get in here, then of course you'll be able to find, and our site is totally searchable too. So, I'd highly encourage you to do that. So cherry pick expert analysis of the leak. So this is the follow-up that we did on the leak. 1 second. There we go. Just got to get that out of the way. If we have any more problems with audio, folks, please, somebody maybe text me, because I've just shut down my view of all of the channels. All right. Excuse me. And there we go. Excuse me. Cease and desist. Cease and desist. So if you head here, you can find now, obviously the study is now no longer up. We did take that down, and I was happy to do that. And instead, what we did was we threw up the response letter, which is highly detailed and makes the argument very well that there was a public interest. It was in the public interest for us to publish that study, including here too as well actual quotes out of media articles and quotes from our coverage and interview with Director General James Van Loon. So that's where we're at. When we put out the leaked response, our interview with Clive Bates, and then basically right after that, it was my 49th birthday. Oh, God, it just hurts to say that. And I then zipped off down to Santa Barbara, California, for a very awesome event. It was the PragerU Summit, which is Dennis Prager's, the Prager University, which have done 2 billion views in just the last year and a half, 2 years. Huge, conservative-orientated videos, fact-based, and a lot. I mean, they're just fantastic. And the people were great. And Jordan B. Peterson was the headliner at the event. So I'm going to do a little bit of deja vu here. I'm going to do a little bit of photo bragging. And let's just see here. Do I still have this set up? I do. All right. So there. So, sorry for all of you that saw this already. Here's Dennis. And yeah, he's definitely a tall guy. Dennis is a nationally syndicated radio talk show host in the U.S., an academic, a writer, author of many, many books. A very, very wise man. I'll have a little bit of a better of who he is when I do a piece on the event and what the primary thing was at this event, which is the fight for Western civilization. And I'm going to be reading an article from today's National Post, which is indicative of the other side of that fight. So Dennis is here, and then here I am grinning like a big Cheshire cat with Candace Owens, who's just wonderful. She's the one that started Blexit, which was the call out to Black Americans saying, you know what, the Democratic Party and the left, they just haven't done anything for you. Wake up, find your individualism and your sense of freedom, and realize that, the left just ain't doing it for you. And like hundreds of thousands of people have kind of done the Blexit thing with her. and very fantastic. And then, of course, Mr. Jordan B. Peterson. We're both kind of looking off in the wrong direction. I don't know how that's possible, but there you go. Jordan is amazing. His meeting him in person, I bet you meeting him in person today is different than meeting him in person, say, a year or two ago. I would be pretty certain about that. I've got a little bit of sound from his talk, but not the whole thing or anything like that. It's obviously it's a PragerU event, but I can say that I think the enormity of what Jordan talks about and how he sees, the struggle in terms of freedom for people, I think that's starting to weigh on him because he's internalized a lot of it, which you can imagine. That's the case, right? The fact of the matter is that, if I was to boil down one of the key things that is about his message, it would be the fact that as human beings, we are all born with the capacity to do great evil. I think history has borne that out. Even everybody's own daily life history, can bear that out. And why is it that somebody can betray another so deeply? There's just, and people have the capacity to do great evil. And arguably, right on the other side of that coin are the people who believe that human beings are born good. And it's only faulty social institutions and ignorance that make people do bad things. So if you can fix the social institutions and have better education, control over the education, very tight control over the education, and if you can do that, you can engineer a better human being. That's fundamentally Jean-Jacques Rousseau out of the French Revolution, and really is what created the left. That is the left. That's what drives progressives and the progressive left and the left and left. So what's interesting, and I'll do this much quicker in the piece, is that you've got Jordan talking about how human beings have the capacity to do great evil. And then you've got Dennis Prager on the other side, who his top thing really, because these are very big, high-level things here, as Jordan would say, very high resolution or very low resolution. I've got to figure out which way that is. So here's the deal. Dennis on this side will say that the worst single idea created ever by man, definitely in the last 300 years, was this idea that human beings are born good. That's just fundamentally, you can pull so much of Dennis's, commentary and writing up to that level. So that's what makes the pair of Jordan and Dennis Prager so good at this event, because they're not both sides of the same coin. Their argument's the same, but what it's doing is it's showing, the two sides of the argument. Funny enough, if you have not read or seen or read the book The Blank Slate by Steven Pinker, and there's another example of one of Canada's greatest thinkers and academics and authors and person who does social commentary, political commentary. Huge, Steven Pinker. And The Blank Slate is all about tabula rasa, which is when a person is born, are they born with stuff already written on the slate, or are they a blank slate and it's only then culture, i.e., social institutions and education that, fills up the slate? And it's like the fundamental thing that divides kind of, left and conservative. I hate using right because it's so screwed up, because Hitler was right. Yeah, he's right. Fascist is right of leftism, but conservatism is not on that side. And by the way, just so you know, right, living in North America, conservative is completely different than the term conservative in Europe. We're brand new. This is a new world. There's no conserving a monarchy here. All right, so let's jump into what today's conversation is going to be about. So it is a National Post article. "12 Rules for Strife. NDP furious over House of Commons committee invitation for Jordan Peterson." This was out just this afternoon. That's correct. So at 5:26 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, I'm just going to check my audio here one last time. And just, bear down here and make sure I got it. All right, that's good. All right, everything's happening. I don't see any fires. Okay, guys, I'm going to do this again, which means that I'm going to say the things that I said again that are going to get me really in frickin' trouble. All right, here we go. MP Tracy Ramsey said the Conservatives are dangerously pandering to divisive politics instead of standing up for human rights. The NDP is objecting to an invitation Conservative MPs have extended to psychology professor and author Jordan B. Peterson to testify before the House of Commons Justice Committee, calling it irresponsible and morally reprehensible. Man. Irresponsible and morally reprehensible. Jordan B. Peterson is a major thinker, not just in Canada, but globally. The left loves to talk about the people. The people. We're always doing things for the people. It's the people. Well, there's a lot of people who believe in what Jordan B. Peterson has to say, or at least want to give Jordan B. Peterson a shot, a hearing, or open to discussion and dialogue. So calling it irresponsible and morally, he's saying that it's irresponsible and morally reprehensible for the Conservative Party to invite a prominent Canadian thinker to come and speak in Parliament on this very major issue. That is just crazy. That's it's a dehumanizing thing. Now, obviously, I'm going to be talking a lot more about hate as we're moving forward, because hate is just an undefined word. It is a cudgel. It's a tool of the left used as a weapon. That is simple as that. I mean, outside of absolute clear as day, we should handle hate like pornography. That's, what was it, in the 1960s or something, like maybe the 70s it was, the U.S. Supreme Court, can you define pornography? And they can't actually. It's just basically you'll know it when you see it. Well, okay, if that's the case, and if that's what they're trying to say with hate, you know it when you see it, well, we better be really careful about that. You can't apply the same kind of pornography thing there, because it's a subjective judgment. And unlike pornography, where, obviously, I'm not going to get into, valid arguments that, there are people who are hurt by pornography, no doubt, right? And there's a whole host. I'm not going to get into there. I'm not going to fall on the left thing here where I have to first, preface all my comments by saying, well, of course, pornography is bad, and of course, whatever, fine, got it. But hate can't be, you can't apply a subjective thing to hate. It has to be really clear, right? Because we're talking about something that when you attach that moniker to another person in today's environment, where not only peers, but employers, and then government, and potentially even a law enforcement comes just screaming down on you, right? It can't just be a social mob. But then again, the left loves the mob, the people, right? All right. So when you use language like it's irresponsible and morally reprehensible, it dehumanizes the target of that language. And that's where the real hate is. And you see it all the time. The dehumanizing, I'm going to say it, of Trump, right? So much of the attacks against him is using language that you just would not use at another human being. And it's coming out of CNN and MSNBC. I mean, how these people can sleep at night, I have no idea. And how anybody who knows anything about what's proper could sit there and hear what anchors are saying on those networks and believe that it's right. I don't care. Trump could be a bad guy. Maybe he is. Whatever. You just can't use that kind of language. It dehumanizes. And then especially when they're the party of anti-hate. So in a statement released Tuesday, NDP MP Tracy Ramsey said the Conservatives are dangerously pandering to divisive politics instead of standing up for human rights. Despite the outcry, Peterson is scheduled to testify Thursday morning as the committee continues its ongoing study into online hate. The committee's work on the issue came in the wake of the Christchurch shootings in New Zealand, which targeted Muslims and killed 51 people. In an interview with the National Post, Conservative MP Michael Cooper, one of the committee's vice chairs, said the NDP has been aware of the witness list for about a month and had ample time to object to Peterson's inclusion before it was finalized. Cooper called the NDP statement an obvious effort to play politics, considering that it's only on the eve of the committee that the NDP is expressing their outrage. And here's a good pull quote here. We understand there's a balance of free speech, but there are limits to what you can say in this country, and that's exactly why the online hate study is so important. Ramsey, another of the committee's vice chairs, said that Peterson is strongly on the wrong side of history. So what does a society do when prominent people are on the wrong side of history? What does that mean? You know, in the context of everything else, right? Like, what do you have to do if somebody's on the wrong side of history on an issue such as hate, and you're on the wrong side of history? So let's clear out all of the garbage here, okay? This is about hate. They're saying that Jordan B. Peterson is a purveyor of hate, and he's on the wrong side of history. So what do you do with people like that? So I'll pick that up again. Ramsey, another of the committee's vice chair, said that Peterson is strongly on the wrong side of history, claiming his views on gender identity and Islamophobia are inflammatory and dangerous. He has repeatedly criticized the word Islamophobia, saying it's ill-defined and it's not a word with integrity. Ill-defined, not a word with integrity. I'm going to pour myself here a little bit of my Diet Dr. Pepper because I need to be very precise with my words on this particular one. Now, back in the day when I was still writing my political column, The Duel, you know, we tackled Islamophobia and a bunch of these issues, and they always generated, even then, a huge amount of, flame from the left. And, fair enough. But let's just, take a peek here at what exactly this is saying. He has repeatedly, so meaning Jordan Peterson, he has repeatedly criticized the word Islamophobia, saying it's ill-defined. Okay? Well, isn't it? For one, language is important. And language is a thing that kind of does exist in a living, breathing way, especially the English language, which, unlike lots of other languages, and I believe it is the only one that is completely free-flowing. It's always been that way. I mean, there's like 40,000, English words. And there is no governing body that decides English, whereas, for instance, in French, like 300 years ago, 200 years ago, 100 years ago, I mean, there's still quite a bit. I don't know now, but through my readings of history, there's been committees having to put together the dictionary for the French language. So there's much smaller number of words. Each one's massaged, approved, put into the language. That's not the case with English. English is free. It's the language of freedom because the language in and of itself is free, right? The language is free. So you have a particular responsibility definitely with English because it's so easy to create words, and there is a, if they become commonly used, they get into the dictionary. I mean, Islamophobia is a word that didn't really exist 30 years ago, or even I would even say 25. I mean, and I'm not going to go diving in here to look for the history on the word. What I can say is that you can be reading lots of books in the 80s and 90s about Islam and its relationship to the West, and you won't find this word, right? So, I mean, if you want to have a discussion as a human being about the impact that one of the biggest, largest religions in the world has on the other people in the world, you should be able to have that discussion. The left, which created deconstruction, the left, which created all of the tools that are used to go into text and to read between the lines, to look for oppression, to delineate the hierarchy of power structures that are behind what is being written in the book, what was the environment, cultural and sociological and political environment around the creation of the book, and everything else. All those layers upon layers upon layers in which the left uses to deconstruct Western civilization and every text within it, refuses to apply those tools to any kind of criticism or even just textual analysis, anything, when it comes to Islam. So, hey, I'm not saying actually anything about Islam right now. I'm talking about the left. I'm talking about techniques in which they use to look for hierarchies and oppression. And I can certainly tell you they will not apply those same, let me use the left's words. They will not look to problematize, they will not apply a feminist lens, for instance, to Islam. They apply a feminist lens to every single aspect, nook and cranny of Western civilization, but they just refuse to do that with Islam. Why is that? So even if, so somebody could be saying right now I'm Islamophobic, but I'm not. I'm not even actually talking. You can say I'm leftophobic, maybe. The left is mentally ill. All right, so let's jump back into this. All right. So again, this is the paragraph where, and I'm saying most of the same thing here, again, the second time now that there's audio. So that's probably why I'm hesitant, because I can't recall if what I've said already. So back to the post here. Jordan Peterson, he originally came to prominence for bulking out legislation to add gender identity and orientation to the Canadian Human Rights Act, and refused to use preferred pronouns for trans students, arguing it was a form of compelled speech. Peterson did not respond to the Post's request for comment. Now, let me be very clear. I mean, I've heard Jordan Peterson what number of times have to, correct this. Surprisingly, it's in the Post. He's never said, I refuse to use transgender pronouns. His issue was being compelled to use them. So he said on every occasion that, one-on-one, even in the classroom or whatever, like asked, that's one thing. But the other thing is being compelled to do it. So let me talk about this right now. Again, this is the fundamental part of I believe, is what's so dangerous about what's going on right now. And so transgendered, I mean, there's zero against them, right? And I believe, and I've written about this previously in my political column, at the time they already were protected under human rights, right? So they're being afforded a unique kind of protection under this law that no other minority group is afforded. And it is indeed compelled speech. So if you work for the government, any government body across Canada, whether it's federal or provincial, if it's academic, school, hospital, even a regular retail establishment is going to have to follow this law. And what it does do is and this is what I think is so pernicious about it, is that under the threat of criminal penalty, and that's obviously the farthest part of it, but let's just pull it all the way back to the earlier part, under the threat of complete total ostracization from your peers and from your family and friends and your workers and your employment and your school and on social media and everything else, right? If you mispronounce somebody and they make a complaint to the Human Rights Tribunal, well, the Human Rights Tribunal has to, at least I know this for one in British Columbia for sure, Premier Clark made that clear before she lost the last election, was that every single complaint will get followed up on. Fair enough, right? But it's a pretty drastic complaint, that one. And it can cost thousands of dollars, do huge damage to reputations and everything else. And so what is this? This is a mispronouncing around gender. So what you have to believe as a Canadian now, right, is that the Canadian government has now said that there is no such thing as a distinction between a man and a woman. Biologically, there is no distinction. So, I mean, either you believe in science or you don't. This is the same government, right, that wants you to believe in their position on climate change. Same one that wants you to believe their position on vaping. So, which are all science-based. And here we have one of the most fundamental aspects of reality and our understanding and connecting with human beings is that there's a distinction between man and woman. And this is saying that that's not the case. Now, hold on. There's somebody's really bleeping in here. There you go. So, yeah. It's tough. It's a pretty tough one to talk about. Here's what's really bad. If you thought what I said was already bad, that's just the sliver of it. So because the law has these penalties and they apply basically to so much of public life, it forces Canadians to have in the back of their head, in their front, right, a filter that they have to always be aware of, especially when they're dealing with people that they don't know, and wondering what gender are they, right? I mean, this is not something that human beings have ever had in any kind of way have had to put into their brain. It's very communist that way, right? Like they're forcing Canadians into this dialogue on transgendered. They're forcing Canadians to put this filter that denies the science of male and female, right? As a distinction. Nobody's saying there are not other distinctions to be made, but this is pretty much the fundamental distinction of human beings and life on this planet. We come in binaries. Yeah, there's exceptions to the rule, but those are exceptions to the rule. Life is binary. At least the human species is, right? So that's what's so evil about it, is that it's compelling you to not only speak a certain way based on what I would say is a lie about science, I mean, or a complete total denial of science, right? Not only speak that way, but even before you've spoken, you've had that filter in your brain, which you've had to apply to your interaction with somebody that you don't know or somebody that you don't know well. That's how things go really, 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 really bad, right, in society. So that's my issue with all of this. So let's get back to finishing this off. Ramsey called on the Liberal Party to join the NDP in denouncing Peterson and the decision to invite him to the Justice Committee. Speaking in the foyer of the House Wednesday afternoon, Liberal MP Randy, I'm not going to say his last name, said he was looking forward to holding Peterson's feet to the fire at the committee hearing. Oh, isn't that great? A good denunciation of Peterson and then hold his feet to the fire. It's very Jacobin of you. That's very French Revolution of you. Oh, Robespierre, that's just great. The people, I'm sure, will be very happy. The mob will be very happy when you hold Jordan Peterson's feet to the fire. And then the denouncing, well, that just goes great. Very Mao of you. We understand there's a balance of free speech, but there are limits to what you can say in this country, and that's exactly why the online hate study is so important. Cooper, conservative MP, said that a committee invitation does not mean that the party approves of everything the speaker says, but pointed out that Peterson is a massively popular best-selling author and a tenured professor at the University of Toronto. Peterson has said his book has sold about 3 million copies and is being translated into 50 languages. Peterson is also an occasional contributor to the National Post and has offices in the newspaper's building, a post-media spokesperson says. Ooh, said spokeswoman. How very conservative of you. That's very nice. I actually said spokesperson. I was just so trained, I even corrected that in my own brain. I said spokesperson instead of spokeswoman. Unbelievable. All right, so we're almost done here, guys. This is the second time I've had to do this today. So Professor Peterson certainly has views that are controversial. Not everything he says I agree with or endorse, but that doesn't mean he shouldn't be allowed to express his views, said Cooper. The NDP are hyperventilating. Frankly, it should concern Canadians when we're talking about speech that there are those who want to tell people what to say and what to think. Yeah. Money shot, everyone. Oh, right. This has got nicotine in it. So that means it's evil. But if it had cannabis in it, it'd be A-OK. Thank you. Again, another wonderful gift from the left. All right, guys. And this is it. I had read, okay, you know what? The article here kind of falls apart right at the end. And I powered through that before on the first go, but I'm not going to do that now. So let's see here. Is there anything else that I did in the first rant? And no. Okay, so this was obviously an unstructured RegRant. One that's likely to haunt me forever. We're going to do more on a lot of these topics. I'm hoping that when it comes time for us to reach out to our audience, because we do have a good audience here at RegWatch, that you guys might be so kind to help support our content, not just our vaping content, of course. On this kind of Jordan Peterson note, I had set up our Patreon account back a year ago, and threw all of the information in there and started populating it with our videos. And then just right around the time that I was getting ready to do a big push to go out to our audience, that was when Patreon lost their junk. And then, of course, all of the funding apps and the credit card companies and PayPal all turned on conservatives. And so Jordan Peterson led the charge to pull out of Patreon, which was a big deal, and a ton followed. And so at that point, RegWatch was left in a little bit of a quandary on what to do. And the problem is that Peterson and Dave Rubin were making it very, very clear that they were working on an alternative, something that's tech-orientated, maybe encrypted, in Bitcoin, something like that, that was going to help solve the issue that was being faced with a lot of conservative commentators. Now, obviously, with a video like this, it's clear, you could call me a conservative commentator. RegWatch's main coverage on issues, we certainly have our point of view, and it's certainly pretty clear. But really getting in there and going after the left like that and stuff like that is not something that we do in our main stuff. In the rants, that's a whole other ballgame. So I was a little concerned about what to do, because to invest more time into getting Patreon up and fully going out to our viewers and trying to get that support level that we need to then also take our stuff to the next level, which we certainly can do. I didn't know what to do because there was the easy way out would be to just say, look, not everyone's Jordan Peterson or Dave Rubin or any of these other guys. We need Patreon because there's still so many people there. The technology is good. It's rock solid. Build something there and worry about the problem when you have one, and then deal with it then. But, as a conservative, you don't want to put your business somewhere where you don't want to reward that kind of behavior. And if you have seen any of the interviews with Patreon's founders, man, they're just not good dudes, man. They're just not. You can totally tell. I mean, really? So currently we're up on Patreon. So I don't know what we're going to do, but we'll have a solution for that shortly, hopefully, and we'll be coming out to you with that. So thank you very much, everybody. That was today's RegRant. Oh, and one last thing, we have back to regular RegWatch. We have just finished shooting a bunch of pieces on the great news out of Quebec. And for those of you who don't know, there was the Canadian Vaping Association filed a constitutional challenge 3 years ago, which RegWatch covered intensely in 2016, in the spring of 2016, and that ruling has come out, and it was extremely favorable for vaping. I mean, it was fantastic, and we've got some interviews from the lawyer that led the charge and some business owners in Quebec that we're going to share with you shortly. So you guys, thank you very much. I appreciate you sticking through 2 full versions of RegRant, the first one without any audio, and the second one with, well, audio.